Hello, photographers. Today we're going to take a look at some typical problems. Or they're not really problems, they're just things that we need to deal with. For example, this is a photo typical of a tourist site and comes right out of the camera. No alterations on this now. And lots of problems in this, but it's not unusual. But let's take a look at what we could do to enhance this. So this is right out of the camera, and here's a shot for some basic enhancements in the full color. Let's go back. So it included cropping, enhancement of color, saturation, using some individual tools, and then we converted this to black and white. So we've gone from this to ultimately this black and white version. So let's begin and see what we do to make some of these alterations. I'm working in Lightroom Classic CC, and we're going to use all of the tools, or many of the tools in Classic CC. So let's begin we're in the develop mode. Here's the image out of the camera, and we're over here on our basic platform up here. Here's our profile and basic platform. Let's start with a white balance. Let's grab the tool here and find a neutral gray, 18% gray approximately here. Does that change much? A little bit. Let's try another spot. Okay. And one more we'll go for it. Let's take this spot on her shirt. There we go. Good. Let's go with that to work with. Now we'll come down here and we'll begin working our sliders. Let's drop the exposure a little bit and add a little punch in the contrast. Here's we're back in exposure. Let's go ahead and darken it, because we'll come back in and add some treatment individually to enhance it. Here's our highlights. We'll take that down. Notice what that does to the sky. Dropping down the highlights punches up the midtones in there in the sky. Here's shadows. Look what that does. Look at the areas around in here in the vendor's carts. How nice that comes up here. Now whites, hold your Alt key. Move your white up till you see a little bit of the light, then back it down, and a little black. I like to see just a little black, not too much. If you go this, it's just going to be much too dark. So just a little bit to add some punch and contrast in the black areas. A little clarity, good. A little dehaze, that always helps too. Look at the contrast up in the blue sky there. And a little vibrance and a little saturation. Too much in saturation, it begins to look like a cartoon. So you got to be careful on how much of these sliders you use. On the tone curve, highlights, I like to move that up a little bit. It's kind of nice up there. The lights, again, we're going for contrast here, a little bit of dark, and move in on the shadows a little bit. We're going to work the shadows a little bit too. All right. Let's go ahead and do some lens correction. Any aberration, profile. And let's go ahead and correct our upright profile here. Look how the building is slanted in. Very typical in these kinds of pictures. So we'll hit auto and see what that does. That helps a little bit. Let's come down to rotate, and we'll rotate a little bit. Helps to be able to have that grid that comes on. It gives us something to work with. And we'll hit constrain crop. That way no whites and the edge of the photo come in. And that's all we're going to do with it right now. So let's see what we've come up with. Here's our history. This is where we ended up, and here's our beginning. So right away there's a lot of contrast, a lot of difference, a lot of punch, a lot of color. Now with those changes, let's go ahead and make the conversion to black and white. And here's what we're going to work on. Let's go first to the black and white. There it is. This is the final version. Notice how the building back here, the church, is highlighted, the vendors' carts, various spots. So we're going to use global settings and very specific individual tools in the settings. So let's take our color version that we've just edited. We'll come back up here to the palette in basic, and we're going to switch over to black and white. There it is. Now let's run through the tools in our basic form here and workflow. So let's see what we have for exposure. Let's come down on it. We obviously don't need to change any temperature or coloring because we're in black and white. Contrast, there is no right or wrong. It's all to your taste as the artist. Highlights. I want to keep it dark. Because we're gonna change this to being a more of a night photo. Come back up to exposure, bring it down a little bit more. And on shadows, whites are good, clarity. Okay, coming on down, and we're going to begin working on the tone curve. Let's grab shadows. There we are. Here's darks and lights. We're looking for contrast between white areas and black areas. Kind of that Ansel Adams look. All right. Here's our color settings in black and white. So if we go to the tool up in here, right here, and we can put it onto an area that we want to work with and drag it up to highlight it, down to bring it down. Let's try the sky. I want to bring that sky down. Good. Let's see what happens down here. Now that takes it down a little bit too far. We lose some of the detail and some of the shadow area. We're going to come back with the specific tools for those areas. Split toning we don't need. Sharpening will increase maybe about up to 68. Let's see what that looks like. We're going to come down here on the zoom tool, zoom in. Now let's take our sharpening all the way down, now all the way up. Can you see the difference? Here it is, flat, or at least no sharpening, and add 150 points of sharpening, and it's just too grainy. Let's take it down to about 50. And masking. Remember masking now? What happens when you mask, those areas that are white get sharpened, the black areas don't get sharpened. Obviously, nothing there. That's too little, and someplace right in between, good. And now luminescence will come up to about 20. So sharpening, I like to go 50 to 75, if that, and luminescence someplace in the 20s. Okay, let's back on out. See what we look like. We're getting there. Lens profile, we remove chromatic aberration if there was any from any backlit sky coming around the various points there. Lens profile, I use a Nikon lens, and it was this 14 to 24. So that helps clean up distortion. We've done some transformation. Let's rotate it a little bit more, get this a little bit straighter. Good. Okay. Cropping, we're not going to do that. In calibration, we're not concerned with that because we don't have any color we're working with. So let's come back up. Now that's our global changes. Now we'll begin to work with the individual tools. Let's start with cropping. Let's get rid of some of this area in here. Let's take the side in. Let's get our eyes to focus more in the center of this whole collaboration. And we'll move some of the people out of here too. We'll keep some in. There we go. Maybe about to there. All right. Hit our enter key. We've got it cropped. Good. So far, so good. Okay, let's grab our radial tool, our graduated filter up here. We're going to darken down the sky. Ansel Adams always had a dark horizon. Come on. There we go. His skies are always dark. So in the graduated filter, let's move our exposure down. It's this top section that'll become darker, like that. Then it graduates to less and to a more neutral or original tonality. So you can move this, straighten it this way. Move it down. Let's darken the sky considerably. We're going to go back and bring back the highlights and the steeples of the church. Let's do the same on the down here on the base. So what we're doing is isolating our eyes to come into the center of the photo. Okay, now we'll begin to work on both the elliptical tool, the brush, and see if we can't begin to bring some highlights into this. Let's start right here in the center. So we're on the elliptical tool, add a little exposure, a little bit of shadow. Let's open this up a little bit more. Add a little more highlights to this, more exposure, more shadow. I like that. A little clarity. Good. Let's copy this. Hold your control key, click on duplicate, then take this over here. Same thing, duplicate. Let's come back over on this side. Good. I like so far. Let's grab a new brush. What we're going to do this time is we're going to light underneath the card. So I've noticed that there seems to be a light there. When I've seen these in the central and the Hardin area, there we go. Light that up a little bit more. Good. How about down here in the base? This person's sitting there. Let's get this a little bit brighter. So I'm really only using the exposure and the shadow tools, a little bit of clarity in all of these, to achieve what we want. Okay, we're getting some light. Let's come up here to the building. We'll put a light in the window. There we go. Do the same thing down here, this window, and in this one. In both these cases, they need to be lit a little bit more. There we go, and this one here. All right, let's light the people. They're on the street. The street light is lighting them. There we go. Again, exposure. Terrific. Let's grab a new brush. And we'll begin working on the buildings. There we go. There. on the balcony. Notice how you can turn these elliptical. There we go. Let's light that up a little bit more. Good. Down here too. There we are. So far so good. Let's do a little work on the tree here first. All right, let's come on up to the statue of Mr. Allende. Light him up. The Padre. A little bit in here. Okay, let's come in a little bit and we'll work on the church. Let's start down here. I want to grab a new brush. Elliptical tool. If you click on it and the dot in the center changes color or becomes a black, then that means that tool is live. Then you can make the changes on it like that. Back off just a little bit. Okay. We'll light the windows, doorway. I'm going to move pretty quick now. See? Let's brighten that up. This church has a lot of spotlights all over. Here's the belfries in here. So we'll light those up. Let's add a little shadow in there to open it up and look inside. There's the bell itself. Do it over here. Yeah, we're getting there. A little clarity on it, a little more shadow. Just work around, keep adding up here some more. Now here's where our graduated filter for the sky darkened our steeples, so we need to brighten them back up. There we go. There we are. Get that a little brighter, more shadows, more clarity. We can add some more whites to it. There we are, some more. So because this is pretty dark, it's going to necessitate a number of these circles, the elliptical circles, to brighten it up. But that's all right, because then it gives us the contrast and the highlight that we want. Let's come on down to here. So you notice how you make these circles work is you start in the area, in the center of the area where you want the circle, and then pull it down and drag it out. There we are. And keep making the adjustments. Let's see what we look like. Let's back down a little bit further. Not bad. Let's see what happens if we add the brush to this. Here we go. It'll pop up here. I like these windows to be lit a little bit more. Let's go back to the elliptical. The rendering is a little slow. That's all right. There we go. Okay, we're going to work on these windows here and this whole bottom section. I think I'd like to have more lights on down here. There we are. How about right here too? Get some light in these windows. I like it. I think a little bit more up in here too, in the belfry. But this one. Let's get all the three belfries lit up there pretty good. And we'll add little whites to that. A new brush. Here we go. All right. We'll do a nice big one here. Here we are. How about over in here? There we are. Good. Let's see what we look like. Okay, let's move on to some other areas. For example, let's light the lights. There we go. We got our plus sign, so we can open it up to these lights here. Love doing the lights. We'll take the elliptical tool, put it in the center of the light, drag it down. Get that nice and bright because it's throwing some light all over the place, I'm sure. There we go. All right. Let's let this render up a little bit more. Let's move this up a little higher on the Padre. There we are. In fact, I think I'll close it down a little bit so it focuses more on him. So we can light that face up a little bit more. There we are. Go to new. Light the dot. Move it up. Good. Let's work some of these areas down in here while we're here. Back into the elliptical. Great tool. Allows you to focus your lighting where you want to. There we go. Render. How about over in here? It looks good. Let's take the brush and we'll do a little here. Oh, we got a light up here we didn't see. Back to the elliptical. Here we are. Good. A new brush there. We're going to work this area here a little bit, and we'll use the brush to do that. Let's see what that does. There we go. Let's open it up a little bit. Brushing always seems to take a little longer to render. I think we'll just jump over to the elliptical and do it that way so we get the shadows in the corner of this building. There we go. Let's see what we look like. Let's do something with these people here. There we go. All right. I like, huh? Finish that done. Here's our color, and it goes into our black and white. Let's take another look at that. All right, so here's our full color. This was the original black and white we were aiming for. Here's the converted, and all we have to do is just brighten it up a little bit. So let's do something else. Let's do one more thing. We're going to do this in Photoshop. So come up here to the very top where it says Photo, and you're going to edit in Adobe Photoshop 2018. Hit the edit. It'll open in Photoshop. We're in obviously Lightroom right now. It's rendering and resolving into Photoshop. Good. Now, in Photoshop, what we're going to do is make sure that our layers palette is open. Come up here to Windows if you don't see it, and then just come down to Layers. So you're up to Windows, open up in Layers, and here's our palette. Then come down to the eyeball here, and click on that and open up Levels. Move this over here. So in levels, we have three sliders that we prominently are going to work. This is the darkest of it, as you can see in the histogram, and here's the brightest over in here. What we're going to do is move the middle slider to the right to darken it just a little bit, and then the far right one to the center to lighten a little bit. That adds a little more contrast to the whole picture, to the whole scenario. There we go. I like that. If you click on Save, this will open up in Photoshop, back into Lightroom again. I think I'd like to this could be interesting. Let's move our temperature slider, our yellow, all the way up into the yellow. Let's add a little color up in here. It almost gives a little bit of a sepia kind of a look. I like it. All right, that's it. Let's leave it where it is, and we've come from this color to the black and white here is our final version right here with a little bit of sepia in it. Let me see how you do. Let me see how you do, and send me samples of the images that you end up with. Enjoy.